দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ জানাতে চ্যানেল 24 এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে প্রতি পর্বে আমাদের সাথে কখনো দেশি কখনো বিদেশি অতিথি থাকে এবং সেই দেশি বিদেশি অতিথিদের সাথে আমরা নানান বিষয়ে কথা বলে থাকি। আজকে আমাদের সাথে যে যোগ দিবেন তিনি সুদূর ওয়াশিংটন ডিসি থেকে আমাদের সাথে যোগ দিবেন। তার নাম কেলিফে রদ্রিগেজ। তিনি যুক্তরাষ্ট্র পররাষ্ট্র দপ্তরের লেবার বিষয়ক অর্থাৎ শ্রম বিষয়ক বিশেষ দূত। আপনাদের সকলের নিশ্চয় খেয়াল আছে গেল বছর নভেম্বরের মাঝামাঝিতে যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের পররাষ্ট্রমন্ত্রী নতুন লেবার মেমো ইস্যু করেছিল। যে লেবার মেমোতে বলা হয়েছে যদি শ্রমিকের অধিকার বিশ্বজুড়ে যে কেউ লঙ্ঘন করুক তার উপর নিষেধাজ্ঞা দেওয়া হবে এবং আছে আরও অনেক বিষয়। সেই বিষয়ের পরপর ঢাকা শহর অনেক আলোচনা হয়েছে, সমালোচনা হয়েছে। যুক্তরাষ্ট্র এটি নিয়ে নতুন একটা টুল হিসাবে পলিটিক্যাল টুল হিসেবে ব্যবহার করতে চাচ্ছে। বাংলাদেশ সহ যে কোনো দেশের উপর তাদের যাদের রাগ রয়েছে কিংবা তাদের ক্ষোভ রয়েছে সেখানে এইগুলো নিয়ে আলোচনা হতে পারে, অ্যাপ্লাই করা হতে পারে। সেই বিষয়ে আসলে বিস্তারিত জানবো কি আছে সেই লেবার মেমোতে এবং সেই লেবার মেমোতে বাংলাদেশের আসলে কতটুকু করার আছে, কতটুকু যুক্তরাষ্ট্র বাংলাদেশকে সহযোগিতা করবে। আর সেই বিষয়ে আমাদের সাথে যোগ দিয়েছে কথা বলার জন্য কেলিফে রদ্রিগেজ। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো। আই হোপ ইউ আর ডুইং গ্রেট।
Good. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, Murshid. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk to you tonight about this exciting new global labor policy that President Biden initiated just a couple months ago.
Exactly.
I joined.
Exactly. So why this initiative is now on everyone? Why it is now? Is it just because the election, US election, or it's just it has a long background?
So the global labor strategy, this policy that President Biden launched in November, is part of an ongoing effort under the Biden administration to promote worker rights in the US and now with this initiative globally. We are really excited to be able to bring this work into our foreign policy and diplomacy work because President Biden really personally believes that workers are crucial to economic growth and development. And we've done that through the policy work in the US. And this is really our chance to take that broadly, make sure that workers around the world, that their rights are respected, that they're able to organize unions, and that they can do so without obstacles and threats and harassment. Because we know that that will bring economic growth and development to countries around the world and also support American workers.
Right. And when this was announced, Secretary of State announced that, and he also told that if someone doesn't follow that country or organization will be sanctioned. So that make a big news in Dhaka. You understand, it was before election, and it was like US is looking towards Dhaka or Bangladesh. If you don't follow the labor law or the labor memo by US, you will be sanctioned. Will you please elaborate, because there's a lot of confusion?
Sure. Happy to elaborate. So the global labor strategy, as its words describe, is about global labor rights. It's not about singling out any particular country. It's really about bringing workers' needs and rights and protections into the middle of our bilateral, multilateral, global engagement. While sanctions are part of the work that we do, we engage with workers through labor dialogues. We promote workers when we're talking about investment and promoting investment in partner countries. We want to make sure that the investment is supporting workers' ability to have a decent salary and be able to exercise their rights, be able to negotiate collective bargaining agreements, and again, to do so without fear of harassment, retaliation, or violence. So this policy is not, it is very much a proactive, positive platform for us to work with partners to promote labor rights.
Right. So whenever any strong decision will made by the authority, is there will be any pre-notice to that particular country or particular organization, hey, you are crossing the border, not cooperating with us, our laborers are suffering? So is there a pre-notice?
So this policy, it's not a law. It doesn't create new sanctions. It simply instructs US government agencies and departments that work abroad with elevating workers and labor rights and the right to unionize in the work that we're doing. And we are doing that in a few different ways. One is making sure that workers are at the table. And President Biden and Secretary Blinken have instructed all chiefs of missions around the world to meet with workers, to hear what their issues are, what their concerns are, and what their needs are so that they can support their families and support their communities and promote so that they can all thrive. Another part of this work is, as I mentioned, defending workers who are under threat or attack. Of course, we were very disheartened to learn of the killing of Shahidul Islam last summer. We've been, disheartened to see the threats that workers face globally, certainly in Bangladesh, around the minimum wage protests. But we think that this is an opportunity for us to work closely together with the Bangladesh government to make sure that workers' rights are included in policy development and to ensure that we can raise the floor and raise conditions for workers in Bangladesh and in the US, really globally across global supply chains. And we've got examples of enforceable binding agreements where brands, including US brands, have committed to a set of standards and enforce those standards in their supply chains. And those are the kinds of models we hope to be able to expand and replicate and support, similar to the Bangladesh Accord.
Right. So US is moving towards the labor diplomacy, and we also have seen that a labor attaché has been appointed in Bangladesh. So he or she will be working with us. How do you see the total labor situation, movement, and union thing in Bangladesh? You were also in Bangladesh, if I'm not wrong, in 2018 to 2020. So from that moment till now, how do you see, and what are US really looking at the new labor law amendments? What are the sector US will be really love to see the progress?
Sure. Yes, Morshad, I had the great privilege of being able to work for a couple of years in Bangladesh in Dhaka on labor rights. And during that time, I developed a deep admiration for Bangladeshi people, the culture, the history, and in particular for the millions of women garment workers who produce clothes that people wear around the world, right? And I think this policy in particular is really, again, focused on workers, whether they're garment workers in Bangladesh, whether they're sectoral service sector workers or auto workers in the US, workers in Central America, workers in Africa. It's about really uplifting the needs of workers to be able to contribute to our economy and our society and our democracy as well. You mentioned the labor law reform. We would really love to see labor law reform that brings Bangladeshi labor law into compliance with international standards, the ILO conventions. In particular, ensures that workers in the EPZ are afforded the right to unionize, that allows workers to be able to register unions and to have easy access to be able to do that. And finally, that really ensures that retaliation against workers for organizing is addressed, is meaningfully and quickly addressed. We know that that has a real impact on workers' ability to raise wages, improve conditions when there's a chilling of rights and they're too afraid to be able to speak up. And that's really fundamentally at the core, that's what this policy is about, making sure that employers and brands and companies have workplaces where workers are able to raise issues and to solve them together.
Right. As you said, under this new memo, the brands also have commitment. Do they have commitment to raise the price so that it helps the whole supply chain and the laborers in different countries? That includes Bangladesh?
Look, we certainly expect U.S. companies to respect workers' rights in their supply chains, particularly when they're engaged abroad. We welcomed U.S. brands engaging on this in the last year. We are in close communication with them and really support efforts to enable Bangladeshi manufacturers to be able to respect the rights of their workers and to ensure decent work for workers in Bangladesh.
How this memo will turn into a law, or it will remain a memo? Like this labor memo will turn into a law?
So it's a presidential memorandum. It's an executive order.
Okay.
It applies to all of the executive branch. It has not gone through Congress, but I think what this memo is puts into text and into practice what we're seeing increasingly from the U.S. government across the political climate, right? We've seen bipartisan legislation to promote and emphasize trade unions and the right to organize and unionize. We've seen trade policy, worker-centered trade policy, again, supported by both parties in the U.S. to end forced labor in our supply chains, to prevent the importation of goods with forced labor. These are really leading policies that the U.S. government is very clear on. There's broad support for. And we're seeing an increasing trend in the global economic space. What our European counterparts, Canada, Germany, France now have laws around due diligence that require respect for rights, right? Respect for labor rights, and particularly addressing forced labor. But there is a very clear understanding and a really widespread consensus that we need workers to be able to exercise their rights free from harassment and retaliation in order to have businesses thrive and have economies succeed.
Right.
So this directive is not a law. It has not been passed through Congress, but it really builds upon a whole of government approach that has existed for several years now, and that the Biden-Harris administration has really advanced as well, built upon to promote workers and labor rights and needs.
And will U.S. ask their allies to join, like allies like G7, G20, in this movement?
Yeah, so there's a portion of this memo that directs all U.S. government agencies engaged in multilateral settings, whether it's the ILO, the OECD, the UN system, or these economic platforms, to advance labor rights. And we've been in discussions with our partners and like-minded countries about how we do that. It is very much a priority from the president to Secretary Blinken to the undersecretaries in the U.S. Department of State and our colleagues across the interagency that workers really see labor issues be top of mind and be at the top of the agenda in all of these arenas.
Right. And I have seen in one section of the memo, it says USAID will be organizing some events to train up people, to educate, and to give more details. Will you add any point in this section?
Sure. So here in the State Department, the U.S. government is one of the largest infrastructures across the globe for human rights and for human rights programming and support. And through the State Department's technical assistance and our internal capacity, training capacity, we are incorporating labor standards and labor issues. We want to make sure that our econ officers understand what a collective bargaining agreement is and how it contributes to raising conditions for workers and respecting rights. And I think, we're also looking at how we coordinate our human rights assistance and civil society support to complement labor rights policies and priorities. And I know, in close consultation with private sector and our counterparts in partner countries, we're looking for opportunities to strengthen social dialogue with labor unions. So organizations such as the Solidarity Center in Bangladesh that can work with government and private sector in Bangladesh to really help overcome barriers to organizing and ensure better standards in supply chains. Those are some of the ways in which the U.S. government is looking to offer the support and resources for partner countries to do some of this work together with us.
Right. So the criticism is there that it's going to be a new tool or weapon from the U.S. to sort of control the whole world, or it's going to be a new weapon from the Biden administration. What's your take on that? Because they say it's a political weapon. They say the Biden administration or the U.S. government will use it as a political weapon. Is that so?
So what I love about the labor work is that it is very much about using our platform to support labor rights activists, human rights leaders in countries around the world. This is not, we certainly have priorities and principles in the kind of work we want to be promoting, high road labor practices and supply chains that promote and facilitate freedom of association. But this is not, we're not dictating to other countries or other workforces what they need to do. We are simply engaging with those who are seeking these high road practices and really enabling, it's really all about enabling authentic, independent, and democratic structures and organizations in countries around the world. Bangladesh has that, right? Like I've met some of the really most strategic and compelling labor leaders, former garment workers who are now global labor leaders in this space. And they certainly describe challenges in organizing and obstacles to being able to exercise their rights. So there's more work for us to do together. But this is something we also deal with in the U.S. Last year, we had more American workers on strike.
Yes, we have seen that.
Many years prior, right?
Yeah.
President Biden has been outspoken in support of workers organizing and activism that, including strikes, right? President Biden joined auto workers in Detroit last fall on the picket line, which was part of their right and their ability to organize and exercise their collective rights to negotiate an agreement with companies, right? A groundbreaking agreement that really workers supported democratically and that is going to improve the lives of workers in the U.S. and hopefully also in supply chains globally. So I think these are issues that we are working on at home as well. And we want to work together with like-minded partners to allow them to benefit from worker activism and worker organizing in a way that also will support their economic development and growth.
Right. When are you coming to Bangladesh? That's my last question.
I hope very soon. It's been too long, and I very, very much miss a lot of dear friends, and I hope to come this year. Look forward to seeing you when I do. And again, I just want to thank you, Morshed. I think this issue is so important, again, to the president, to Secretary Blinken personally, to U.S. labor stakeholders who very much are following the progress that Bangladesh is starting to make to remedy some longstanding challenges in labor. And we look forward to doing that together. And we think we look forward to celebrating some progress this year.
Thank you, Kelly, for joining us from 10,000 miles away, if I'm not wrong, and clearing all the confusion, all the criticism and rumors around this new labor memo. Thank you joining us for once again. দর্শক, আমরা কেলিফে রদ্রিগেজের সাথে কথা বলছিলাম। তিনি আমাদেরকে জানালেন যে কোন কোন ক্ষেত্রে তারা বাংলাদেশের শ্রম ক্ষেত্রে উন্নয়ন দেখতে চায় এবং অগ্রগতিতে বাংলাদেশের অংশীদার হতে চায়, কাজ করতে চায়। হয়তোবা তিনি বাংলাদেশে আসলে যখন সাংবাদিক সম্মেলন করবেন তখন হয়তোবা আমরা আরও জানতে পারবো, বুঝতে পারবো। তবে একেবারে যে বাংলাদেশ কেন্দ্রিক নয় সেটি তিনি স্পষ্ট করেছেন এবং সারা বিশ্বের শ্রম অধিকার প্রতিষ্ঠায় যুক্তরাষ্ট্র যে সোচ্চার সেই জায়গা থেকে জো বাইডেনের জায়গা থেকে তিনি কথা বলার চেষ্টা করেছিলেন আমাদের সাথে। দেখা হবে মুখোমুখির অন্য কোনো পর্বে অন্য কোনো অতিথির সাথে। তার আগ পর্যন্ত ভালো থাকুন, সুস্থ থাকুন।